Eric, we've known you a long time. I mean, some really amazing years fishing with you. But, starting off, you've been a guide for 27 years now. You were just telling me. Who is your absolutely your worst client, your worst angler ever, other than Nikki?
You mean as a caster or like as a person?
Just whatever, as a person. Nightmare.
Worst experience.
Yeah, like you can't wait for this day to get over. This guy's driving you crazy.
I mean, luckily it doesn't happen too often, but there's a story I was going to tell you about what we deal with on a daily basis, and contrasts in personalities.
Sure.
And it brings a story to mind. I had two guys that I'd never met before, and which luckily I know most of my people, and we like to help people with shots and coach them. And we were in a shrimp hatch that wasn't a big time shrimp hatch. There were just a few fish around, and you couldn't just blind throw it in there. The tarpon were eating shrimp, things were dying off or hatching or whatever. You had to be kind of accurate, and they were throwing too far ahead of the fish. And I said, guys, you got to throw. It's got to come right across their nose. It's got to be real close. It can't be like 5 feet in front. And one of the guys throws a shot. Keep in mind, I never met these guys. First thing in the morning, and it lands like 20 feet in front of a fish that rolled, and it just ticked the water and ate it. And it's like a 10-pounder, and the one guy's praising him. And I said, well, actually, that wasn't a good cast. You were like 20 feet in front of the one that you saw roll. That was just, I forget what I said, luck or whatever. And the guy in the cooler turns around and says, shut the fuck up. We know what we're doing here. We fished all over the world. And I said, and I don't have a temper really, but I said, look, don't talk to me like that. I'm trying to help you out. If you keep doing that, it's not going to work. That was luck. He just threw like way in front. You know what I'm saying? And
a different fish ate the fly.
Yeah, different fish ate the fly for sure. And I said, look, I can coach you. And he's like, we know what we're doing. Shut up.
Wow.
So yeah, it was bad. That was one of the worst days ever. And then we kind of worked it out. The second day he apologized. He gave me like a hug, shook my hand in the morning, and I found him a bunch of fish the next day. But that was probably one of the worst experiences I've ever had. I got over it though. I sucked it up. I could have fought with him or done something stupid.
Or taking them back to the dock.
I could have. It was worth taking the high road. There's been a couple of other moments, but that was recent, so that's what comes to mind. So, yeah.
But what I've noticed fishing over the years with you is that you're not very emotional.
Yeah, I'm not.
You tell it how it is.
Well,
and if it's, which is great.
Yeah. Not with most guys. Most people can't handle that. I didn't think we were going to get into this right away, but most grown men, you cannot say bad cast. You can't say that. They can't handle it. So
is that your average customer, or even like tournament really good anglers that you've fished with?
80% of people, you can't say that. Yeah, you just got to sugarcoat everything. So it's good if I can be honest with you.
Even like long-term clients.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, there's a few you can say that, but most don't want to hear that.
How was I?
You were great, but your dad, verbally, I wouldn't call it abuse, but no, your dad's good though. Your dad really tells it like it is. And
are you talking about me coaching other people?
No, him.
Or like Nikki?
Nikki, yeah.
Nikki?
I'm joking about the abuse. No, your dad gives it to you really tough. And when I fished with buddies growing up, we were brutal to each other, and that's why I'm a good caster. Mm-hmm. And if I'm off by a foot or not 2 feet, that's a big deal. And my clients, if they're off by a few feet, I usually don't say much, like it's a good cast. But with you, we can be more accurate, with guys who want to hear it.
Well, the thing is, what's really important, and even my entire life, if I was suspect of a cast, I would always say, what do you think?
Yeah.
Because I want to know. I want to get better.
Yeah, that's how you get better, yeah. But I don't know why that is. There's even some guys where they get offended. Even, I'm not saying, it was a fucking terrible cast. Pick up, go again, you suck. It's just bad cast. And they turn around, and after they go, look, I'd rather you say it another way. And I'm like, look, I'm not saying you're a terrible person, a terrible father, a terrible husband. I'm just saying bad cast.
What do you think that is?
Well, we're your team, and the boat is trying to catch fish. So, you're trying to help them out.
And we're not talking about just tournament stuff. I'm talking about every day.
Maybe his wife just beat on him the night before.
It's very common. I think, and I'm not picking on everyone. And if somebody says that, then I just chill out and whatever happens, happens. But, like I suck at golf and I say bad shot, or I did this wrong. It's okay. Yeah. I know I still suck.
Does a situation like that ever affect your guiding ability? Where all of a sudden you two get in a funk and you go, fuck these guys, you know?
No, I don't have I try to take the high road. Like maybe when I was younger, and I don't get hung up on, some guides have to produce numbers every day. That could be more of a bait fisherman thing. But like, they feel let down if they don't come up with big numbers. Yeah. And if a guy's like that, I just change my expectations and we might not catch anything.
I would think that'd be really hard for a guide who, when you're fishing and somebody's expecting to catch a lot to like the numbers
then it's
guy.
Tough. Yeah,
then it's really hard.
Then it's tough. Yeah.
Like, how do you let them down? Like, hey, I'm gonna do the best I can. There's a few fish out here, but
yeah,
if we don't,
we have to constantly adapt as to what's going on. Like it's just tough. Unless it's luckily I have a good amount of regulars, but if they're not. I mean, it just starts off in the first couple hours kind of seeing what you can do.
Yeah.
So
Happy told you one time there should be a leather couch on the boat because you have to be a therapist as a fishing guide.
That's right. I think him and Rick Murphy started that. I don't know if it was Rick or Tim, but he did. He said, yeah, because we do act like therapists a lot of times. Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think it was Flip that said, on a 16-foot boat, the conversations go on that boat where most conversations could never go anywhere else in the world, even in front of a therapist. Like sometimes in a boat, you really have that confidence in your buddy and the guide. Like, man, my life sucks.
Yeah,
I mean, look, when I was going through a divorce, I was fishing with you and Pat Ford.
Yeah,
and I was crying at 10 o'clock in the morning, saying I got to go home.
Yeah.
I couldn't fish.
Yeah, it probably made Eric so uncomfortable.
Yeah,
well, a young Eric.
At that time, like now, I'm used to dealing with things like that. I've done this long enough. Then I didn't know. I was in my early 20s, and I didn't know what to say to someone in those shoes.
Did it freak you out?
I don't remember it that well. I've seen a lot of guys cry in the boat for different reasons. Divorce, kids. Death involved, and now I know what to say, and we talk about all kinds of things on the boat, like you're saying. Mm-hmm. Only once you get to know someone, after years. So you go through a lot. I'll tell you guys a story later, but you go through a lot, for sure. But I didn't know at that age what to do when you're crying. Now I know. Then it's not about the fishing. Let's sit down and have a talk.
Yeah.
So yeah.
It was interesting because when Doug Kilpatrick was going through a divorce, he said, "Man, I just couldn't wait to go fishing because when he was fishing, his mind was just completely removed from the real world."
Yeah.
I couldn't do it.
That's one thing that's great about this different subject, but I really enjoy about like our technical sight fishing, and I do bait fishing, I do a variety of things, but I think it takes you away from your life more than other types of fishing that are more like lazy types of fishing. Not putting down any other types of you don't have to be a sight fisherman to be cool. But when you're engaged, like yesterday I was bone fishing and it was a tougher day, but we were engaged looking, hunting all day. And when you're engaged, like you just forget about life. I mean,
you're distracted.
You really totally forget about life. Yeah, I appreciate that about our type of fishing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you can't think about anything else.
Yeah, if you're into it. Yeah.
Right, and when you're soaking a bait, I mean, there could be a lot of time.
You're on your phone and you're Googling something, and and I always think about that.
Well, I must say, Eric, knowing you and all of your peers in the fishing world, I must say that you've won the admiration and respect of the field as a whole, which I think is more valuable than winning tournaments.
Well,
that says a lot about you.
That's nice of you.
And about your integrity and how you work and how much you respect the fishery and the fish.
Yeah.
I don't know where I want to go with that other than, it's you've been a great friend, and when you started fishing with Nikki, we were talking about who to fish with, and I think that you and Nikki had really a great run there for a while.
Those things are, they're so tough to win, and you just don't get many chances.
You've been second in the Gold Cup twice. You're second in the Golden Fly. You guys lost the Golden Fly by, 19 ounces or something? 21 ounces?
Yeah.
Something like that.
But, and I realize in saying you're second, all the guys who have won all these things have been second a ton of times. So it is what it is. But it's good to be there competing at least.
Yeah.
So.
Talk to us about growing up in what was it, Coral Springs?
Like from the top or from the start?
How'd you get into fishing? You were bass fishing a lot in the local canals and lakes, right? And
my parents ran a marina from when I was born to when I was 10 in Layton, like Seabird Marina in Long Key. And so that we didn't do technical fishing, but it was just like snapper fishing, barracuda fishing. And then my parents got divorced and my mom moved me up to Coral Springs, like up around here, because the schools were much better in the Keys back then. And then I got into bass fishing. So I went from saltwater to bass, and bass are a great thing to learn on just because it's technical. And then I got a John boat when I was like 15, 16, started driving to Flamingo, and I'd still go see my dad in the Keys some. So it was just a broad, type of fishing. I would just do a little bit of everything. And then,
was it just like recreational, or were you like in love with fishing ever since you?
I was in love.
Yeah.
I was in love because there weren't many kids where I lived. Like I didn't have any friends down there. There was like nobody. I would just fish pretty much every day on my own after school. I mean, as a little kid. And then I met, there's always some people that help out. Marty Rostige. I used to work at a summer job at my mom's office, and he was a doctor there, and walked by his office, saw, it looked a little bit like your place, all the memorabilia and fish. And
Marty who?
Marty Rostige. Yeah, right, yeah. And I know what you're going to say.
just fucking with him.
So he's a good guy. And he offered to take me fishing with Frank Stabile, who was a Holiday Isle guide, like back in the day. I don't know where he's at now. And I was 13, I believe, when this was. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I caught a slam, almost a super slam, but it was because of the cast. I mean, he's a great guide, but I knew how to fish then, even when I was that young. But he was great. And then he took me with Rick Murphy, which was cool. Like, I think when I was 14, I'm pretty sure. And I'd seen Rick on TV. And we had a great day red fishing. And then it just turned out that after years later, I got to be friendly with Rick, and I did the camera boat for his TV show. Which was a good paying job, actually. He treated me really well, and kind of just got tied into the whole thing, and then ended up guiding after a little while.
Do you remember the point where you were like, I'm going to make this a career? I'm going to become a guide?
I was working at a supermarket, and I always hated working indoors. Working there and at my mom's office job in the summers, I hated being indoors. And I just decided to do it because of that. My mom made me go to community. She didn't make me. She wanted me to go to a community college, which I did. I was never good in math, so I didn't finish the 2 years. But college math killed me. But at the end of that, I was like, I'm going to do this. I was already taking a few trips like on the side, and then I just started doing it. And that was it.
And it was it backflow trips? How did you market yourself? How did people find Eric Herstedt?
Yeah. Everything was linked to, I worked at a Publix for a long time. A lot of it was linked to that, like managers there and customers coming in and friends of friends. And then Rick got real busy with the TV show, and he gave me a couple people. One still fishes with me, every year, a bunch. And then those people, if you treat people good, and not everyone gets along with everyone, that's life. There's people that fish with me and say I'm high pressure and hate fishing with me. That's fine, but enough stay around, most of them. And, like your friend comes into town and then he tells him, and that's just how it works.
What were some of the growing pains of your early years guiding?
One cool thing I want to say that I made a note about this that I didn't think about till last night, but one of the camera boat shows was with, this is like a big deal. And I could talk about boats forever. I know that's not what we're here to do, but in the world of boats, Rick was doing a show with Tim Hoover. And I had a piece of shit boat then, like my first guide boat. I'm not going to say what it was. And it fell apart. And Tim had hull number 1 HPX, the V. And I was running his boat, and Tim and Tim Hoover and Rick were in Rick's boat, which was a flat bottom, like tunnel HPX, which didn't ride as good. And Rick said that morning to me, he said, this is going to be the boat that, changes everything. And I ran that thing, and I was like, it was the most incredible thing. Think about way back then. Right. And all these boats, Chittims are great boats. They all help each other out. There's design cues taken from one to another. And, but that boat was freaking incredible. And I bought one like a month later, or, you know, shortly after. And that kind of was a game changer because then I had something I could really like do anything with, which from the get-go I had a piece of shit and I was very limited. So
well,
that was
when
cool.
I was fishing the Gold Cup with Hoover.
That was the boat you were in too.
Yeah.
It had a Mercury 90. That was the actual boat.
And he actually ended up putting a 115 on it.
Okay.
And had a chopper prop,
Yeah.
which would take like 200 yards to get out of the hole. But once it got up and out of the
Yeah.
hole, and it was like 60 miles an hour. And it's like, holy shit, this thing is fast. And we almost flipped it one time in the Gold Cup racing. Who were we racing down there? Tom Rowland. Yeah, we left Loggerhead. We were running down towards Key West, and we were racing next to each other, and we hit this wave, and all of a sudden, I'm like sideways in this boat, like, hanging on to everything. I'm like, oh my God, we're going to die in this thing. And now look where they're at.
Yeah.
You know, they're going
it's
almost
pretty cool.
70, 75 miles an hour.
Yeah.
You know, with those boats. But yeah, that boat was incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
So much fun to run.
I think about that when I drive around and see all these HPXs, and they're all around the world. You know, it's interesting how things start off, and yeah. We do some stupid stuff in tournaments, though. I'm a little more cautious these days. But,
So that was an impressive boat for you, and you fished that boat for the rest of your life.
I still do. Yeah.
You still do.
Yeah, I have a variety of boats, but that's still the main moneymaker.
Yeah. Talk about the early growing pains of becoming a guide.
You know, one of the real pains in the ass for me, and I'm not like a businessman, so I never really advertise much, but the scheduling is a pain for me. Not to sound like a little bitch, but like the canceling, the rescheduling, you get everything set and then you switch everything around. That's always been, that might even not be your question, but that's always been a pain that people don't really think about. And then on the boat, I mean, learning how to fish in bad weather. Like a lot of people probably don't think about it, but when, like you guys fish, the weather's good most of the time. Or, if it's bad, you're going to play golf. I know you guys fish in bad weather, but you got to learn how to fish in bad weather.
We learned how to bait fish in bad weather.
So you got to learn it. And guy comes in from out of town, doctor closes his practice for a week and he comes down, you're going to fish and you got to know what you're doing. So right away, learning how to fish in bad weather was huge, which now I'm really good at.
Did you have a mentor that helped you through all that stuff?
I was going to say Rick. I mean, Rick's really good bad weather fisherman.
He is. He was back in his. I mean, he doesn't need to guide now. He's got other success, but he was such a good guide back in the day. I don't know if people realize that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If there was a bad weather tournament, he'd win every one of them.
Just anything. He was good. He won a bonefish major, tarpon. But Rick helped me out, and I'm always secretive about spots. He was too. We never really. It was help with some techniques, but we traded some spots, but not like as much as some people were saying, you learn everything from Rick. Not the case, but he helped me out with some stuff for sure. But he didn't just throw everything at me. That's always a bad way to go. People throw everything to you. You just tend to pass it on and give it away. So.
And you don't understand and don't know how to learn on your own.
Yeah. I've said this to you, Nikki, I think, but if you learn it on your own, you don't give it away normally. You own it. That's yours. Yeah, and if people give you stuff, I see it with weekenders at the ramp. They say good morning to me, and they tell me everywhere they fished, last 3 days. I've been here from out of town, and that's because someone gave them all that. If you work, like, really hard at it, I'm not saying I've never given a place away, but generally guides, like, we might trade basic information, which would be sea trout or, like, Spanish mackerel locations, because there's millions of them. I know you guys aren't interested in those, but that's a moneymaker in the winter. Sure. And that's pretty basic. But when it comes to more technical stuff, if you've learned it, you don't give it away, Some basic stuff you might, but the good spots you certainly don't. I would think it would be one of the biggest nightmares is to tell somebody where there's a fish. Like Steve Huff says, don't tell me because you're stealing from me, right? I say that all the time. But if you by chance tell somebody, hey, I've found some fish over there, and they beat you the spot the next day. Yeah. Then you go in there and go, dude, I didn't tell you to go in there. Yeah. I just told you where I was fishing, and there were some fish there. Yeah. And, guides talking to other guides, that doesn't make any sense, although that's what happens at marinas and all over the world. Lodges, I guess. If you have to work together, that's one thing. But people, I think, get insecure, and they try to impress their buddies, and they tell their stories. The last person you want to tell is a fishing guide. because they're out there every day, you know.
Right.
Or if you're a recreational guy, the last person you want to tell is a freaking fishing guide. It's the stupidest thing you can do. Right. Tell some shitty recreational fisherman because he's never going to find the place. But
How often do you get back, you know, at the end of the day and you tell your client, now look, don't say a fucking thing.
Yeah.
Do you say that?
Well,
you tell them?
I've said that. I said that the other day after we had the video I just showed you. I said, because he's got a boat. I said, don't. He goes, oh no. We had a good tarpon day a few days ago, and I was like, don't fucking say a word. He goes, no, absolutely not. But you kind of know beforehand if someone, I always say, if someone is telling you like where they fished with everybody else, then you know they're going to say the same for your spots.
About you.
Yeah. You know, it's one thing if it's a basic area and somebody mentions we were at whatever beach or shoreline. That's one thing. But if you're talking about technical spots and they tell you where they fish with other guides, you know they're going to give away stuff and you're more cautious.
Are you cautious about fishing somebody who owns a boat?
No, hang on. I have one more thought I want to do, but I'm going to answer that. Yeah, it's a good question. So a guy, I'm certainly not going to say his name, a guy called me to do the big tarpon tournaments like in the last few years. We won't ever fish together. And we didn't, we won't. And he called me and said, I've won a couple of these things. And he proceeded to tell me exactly where he fished with his guide, what flies they were using, you know, what line and this. And at the end of the conversation, I was just silent. I didn't say much. I just was like, yeah, uh-huh.
And he'd already won a couple of these big events?
He'd won, but he, like out of insecurity, he told me all the spots he fished with his guide. And I know his guide. And if you're observant, Nikki knows how observant I am, and you are. You know where boats are, and I'm not going to go fishing those guys. Anyways, I was like, yeah, I'm not interested. Nice talking to him, not interested.
That was a red flag.
Yeah, and he told me everything.
He just fired himself.
Yeah, and I'm not going to go fish there. I was like, this guy's an idiot, you know?
Right.
So your question was, what was his question?
Are you hesitant to fish with clients that have their own boats?
So if there's a lot of my clients have a boat or two even. If they're new to the sport, I'm hesitant because they don't understand the intricacies of this is all I do for a living. Mm-hmm. You know, nothing against guides who are firemen or whatever. Those guys are smart. I wish I'd have done something like that because this is a hard job. But this is all I do for a living. I give them a talk. You know, I'm like, this is my special stuff. The more I trust you, the more we'll go to some better places. But guys that know how the sport works, they'll tell me right away, look, I'm never going to go back. But if it's somebody new, they just don't know usually, you know. And there's a couple guys who will call me and say, hey, are you fishing tomorrow? Which you guys have done, and that's cool. Mm-hmm. Or I'll say I'm not fishing tomorrow. And it won't be where there's a nest of fish. It'll be where, like, fish move by, and you're not really bothering anything. And that's the right way to do it. Call and be like, hey, are you fishing tomorrow? You mind if I go in there? That's rare. Mm-hmm. But that's how it works. So I'm not afraid. I've maybe been burned once or twice ever in a lot of years, so it's not a big deal.
Right.
Yeah.
What would you suggest to somebody who has aspirations of becoming a young new guide in the Keys that might be listening to your interview now?
It's I love the job, but it is got to be one of the hardest jobs. We talk about this, Nikki. Like it is one of the most exhausting, hardest jobs. So make sure you like hard work. And you have to be a people person. That's probably one of the biggest things. If you don't have a personality, I like to talk. It's funny, on land, I'm not much of a conversation person. I stick to myself. But I like talking and getting to know people on the boat for whatever reason.
I think that's imperative because you're in a 16-foot skiff.
Yeah.
It would be pretty awkward if nobody spoke.
Yeah, and one thing when I had a kid, he's got a canoe. He wants to be a guide. He doesn't even have a boat yet. But a friend of mine asked me to have a talk with him, and I just lost my train of thought. I had a senior moment. You're like growing on me here. Holy shit!
It's about a young guy becoming.
It was funny. So, Tim Mahaffey once asked me after the tournament when we were, I don't know, it was like the first or second year we were fishing tournaments. He goes, "How many words do you and Eric speak on the boat to each other?" And I was like, we talk pretty frequently.
Yeah.
But it's funny because he asked that because typically you're a quiet guy off the water.
Yeah.
That's right. You're real personal.
I am.
You don't. Yeah. You're not extremely outgoing and engaging off the water. And so he asked that. But when I fished with Fordyce, we didn't say two words to each other.
That's what Fordyce said about you. He said, "What's up with your fucking son?" He said, "He's a sniper. All he does is just stare into the water."
Well, dude, it felt like if I fucked up a cast, he was gonna like javelin the push ball in my back or something.
Well, he's just visually,
he's intimidating.
Yeah, he's visually,
course,
right. One of my downfalls in tournaments, which we've talked about, Chris Gold and I have talked about. This is a small thing, but I talk too much on a regular day on the boat. And in tournaments, we've talked about this, where, especially in the morning spots where you have freebie shots that just people don't know. Tarpon do stupid shit in the first hour of the day in a lot of places, and you just got to focus. And I just get talking too much in some of the tournaments, and you lose focus a little bit, Mm-hmm. So I've talked with you. I know we've talked about that. Let's just chill here. Let's just focus.
I know when I was fishing with Huber, we didn't speak very much.
Yeah.
If there were some fish around, you're grinding.
Yeah.
And if there's no fish around, you're really grinding because that one fish is imperative.
Yeah.
It's
huge.
That one fish is so big.
Yeah.
And if you're jabbing and talking, you do get distracted.
Yeah, absolutely. I just thought of my train of thought came back. So the question with a young kid getting into guiding, this is something I've always told him. You're going to have to work weekends. So your personal life, it's fucked. Girls want to go out on weekends. Everyone's off of work, off of school. You're working weekends. So it's not until way down the road do you get to take off weekends.
Right.
And then now I'm back to working any time I can because business has been weird the last couple of years for a lot of different reasons. So you better working weekends. That's a big deal with guiding that people don't think about. It sounds like a small thing, but your personal life, your wife, your kid, your kids,
sure.
That's a big deal.
Did that affect your marriage? Working hard?
It didn't, let's see. It didn't help for sure because I'm totally dedicated to fishing. And since I got divorced, I'm fun fishing and exploring around more than ever, I'd say, or more than in years. Mm-hmm. It didn't help because I was dedicated to fishing for sure.
Yeah, it's hard for sure.
Yeah, it didn't,
I have a question for you that I don't think we've ever talked about on the podcast. No, it's nothing. I'm just curious about this. So for the longest time, you backcountry flats guides were like $550 a day, $600 a day.
Yeah.
Who dictates the increase in price? Well, you see one guide. I mean, now during tarpon season, you guys are almost $1,000 a day.
They are.
Yeah,
they are 1,000. Yeah.
There has to be one guide that increases the price that everybody looks at and says, "Fuck, if he's charging $1,000 a day, I'm going to charge $1,000 a day." And it's a ripple effect.
Yeah, that's a difficult. Why'd you have to ask me that question? I don't mind speaking my mind, but what
do you charge?
That's a loaded question. $900 this year, the whole year, the same rate the whole year. Mm-hmm. My egret, it could be $950 or $1,000 because that's 3 people and burns way more gas. So, but $900, that's it for this year.
Okay, let me ask you this.
So I can answer.
Okay,
I can answer,
ahead.
but I'm going to just dibble, kind of dally.
Yeah,
a little. I want to be careful. Yeah. So, So I have regulars most of the year, and those guys get to fish in tarpon season more than my other people. So instead of raising the rate, they get those days because they fish with me throughout the year.
Right.
That's how it works. I know I could charge a little more, but I would feel bad if the weather's bad and fishing sucks. I care about things a lot. It's just how I am. I care about things too much in life in general. I know it sounds weird, but I just care about things a lot. People, the fish. So I would feel bad if I was charging way more and, I couldn't get a spot and I'm scrambling around. And most days are good then. So I'm more comfortable. You got to do what you're comfortable with. And there's some guys who don't fish as much all year and maybe they have another job and they fish out of towners that just come in and use them for tarpon season. And they charge more because they need to make more in that window. I believe I'm having more fun probably than those guys, less stress because I know my people are friends, but they charge more. And I'm not going to say, the amounts really are all over the place. So it's, I talk with 2 guides that you've had on your podcast about price. I've always talked to them. And we talk usually once a year. and we'll talk about it. I don't want to say their names, and we try to keep our stuff the same. And they're legends or well-known guys, and we try to keep it the same.
Yeah, I will say that one time we were fishing a practice day of a tournament, and we went out somewhere in the back, and we fished for 2 hours, and it was shit. It was windy and overcast, and you go, let's go in. You don't need to charge me.
Oh, yeah, okay.
You did say that one time, and that was pretty cool.
Nobody says that.
Yeah, no one says that.
I mean, that's...
Well, it might have been after, like, I remember one day it was cold, and we were out for like 3 hours or something.
Yeah.
Well,
but,
you
go
got to treat, I think Steve Huff says this, and people say it, I mean it, but you have to treat people the way you want to be treated.
And that's where you get
always.
the respect from everybody.
Yeah, I think it's... And as a guide, I've fished with some guides, good ones and bad ones, in other... in the Bahamas and Louisiana. Marty took me out with a couple. Someone took me offshore. I fished with Ralph Delph a few times when I was a kid. So I've seen mainly good, but I've seen some guides that are lazy. And that helps. And there's no worse feeling than going on vacation, booking a fucking flight, coming down, and your guide's just lazy or not doing the right stuff. I know that isn't exactly what we're talking about, but you got to do whatever you think's right. I want to feel good about it. So,
what happens if you have an established guide drop down in price to $550, and when everyone else is charging $1,000?
In the winter months, let's just say Januay, December is cold. The fishing's kind of poor.
No one's going to drop down that low. I will say this too, like, I don't know if I should say the amount, but the price seems high. Like when I started, I believe it was like $325. That's what I charged in '98. Okay, and now it's $900. Like my bigger boat's more. But with the expenses and what everything is, if you're guiding legally and you're doing all the right things with your licenses and all your stuff, you have to work a lot. I'm not complaining. I love it, but you have to work a lot to
pay your bills.
Yeah, you have to work a lot. Like I totaled all my insurances for what they're going to be this year. I don't think it's too good to say an amount on here, but it's like closer to $30,000 than anything for my home, boats, cars, health, everything.
Right.
And yeah, when you total it all up, it sounds like a lot, $900 a day, or if they tip us, it is what it is. But no one will charge $550 because you got to make a living.
Yeah.
So and it's fair. At first, when the prices went crazy, it seemed weird, but it's fine, and I just believe it all evens out, And I have people I like, and I'm happy. So
right,
yeah, people charge whatever they want. So yeah,
you see a lot of people that come to the Keys, and a lot of those guys are Western fly fishermen, trout guys.
Yeah.
And I go to the shows. I just got back from going to New Jersey and Atlanta. And I keep trying to tell people, you have to understand mistakes you're making in your casting before you can go practice and actually correct mistakes.
Yeah.
But how aggravating is it for you, knowing that they're going to be aggravated when they get on your boat?
Yeah.
And this is the week of their life, and they can't get the fly to the fish.
Well, being a trout fisherman out west is a red flag for us. Also, saying you fished all over the world. It's a red flag. It just is what it is, and it's the truth. Fishing here, it's usually windy, and we have some of the most technical fish. It's an incredible place, but we just have technical fish. And when it's calm, people think it's think it's easier to cast. It is, but our fish are that much spookier. So, trout fisherman calls. First thing I say is, "Can you double hull?" And most go, "What's that?" Or, "Yeah, I can," but they can't. And I'm just being honest. It's for people to work on. And it's, again, going back to saying good cast or bad cast. I'm able to help them. A lot of people don't want help. It's just the way it is. Some guides can cast or fish good themselves. Some can. I can fish great. We fish together. And
you're okay.
And I'm able to help.
You're a beginner-ish.
But only a handful want help. So it's difficult. And I'm okay with I'm actually pretty good at catching. I probably told you'd be shocked. I think one of my best things is you give me a terrible fly caster or spin guy, absolutely fucking terrible. More often than not, we're going to have a good day and catch a great game fish. I don't know how. It just, as long as they can answer yes or no questions and point their rod, Do you see it? No, yeah. Just basic stuff. Somehow we catch a fish usually. I don't know how.
People that are listening, what's your telephone number?
But still, and I'm kind of known for that a little bit. Like friends of mine know, like, how do you catch the guy fish? And I'm just patient, and I try to be patient. But people have to work with you a little bit, And I see people fish with guides that they talk bad about or don't like. If you're fishing with a guide that you don't trust, you're a fucking idiot. Like, fish with a different guide. There's a lot of people. It's like marriage,
Right.
That doesn't work out very often. So,
What do you think you're best at? What's your
That's a good question.
Yeah, what do you think
your species?
Yeah, what are you best at?
Good question. I think it's important too to know where you takes the right person stand in the guiding world with all your peers,
Be honest with yourself.
Yeah, exactly. I am. So I would say bonefish and big tarpon. And I'm good at all the species, for sure.
I would have never thought you'd say that.
But bonefish and big tarpon, and then probably general bait fishing, like in the wintertime. I don't want to sound arrogant, but you're asking me. And then snook and red fishing I'm good at, for sure. But it's gotten much more difficult in the last bunch of years with all the boats. That's why I've been going to Chokoloskee more, because it seems like there's more snook and less boat pressure. But the snook and red fishing, sometimes people think it's easy, but like Dave Dinkert is one of the best ever at snook and red fishing. Bonefish, permit, tarpon repeat their cycles like yearly, monthly, or every other year, or every third year. Tide, you can almost set your watch to it. Snook and redfish, there's these other variables. Like, I'm not saying I'm bad at it at all. It's just difficult. Salinity, temperature, boat pressure. If there's a bunch of white pelicans on one side of snakebite, they mud it out, and the fish move from there where you found them for the last week, and they move somewhere else. So I think there's actually way more variables where we fish for snook and redfish. If you think about it, but like bonefish, like the fishing we had yesterday, you can set your watch to it, and you can almost, as long as conditions are similar to when you think they're going to be there, you can't predict the exact amount of shots, but you can have a really damn good idea with them.
Interesting. So they're so type specific, not only type specific, but a certain zip code specific.
Absolutely,
right?
yeah. Now that's like, if it was, I love bone fishing in super high winds, like 25, but now that's a spot where, let's say it's blowing 25 today and cloudy. For the last 25 years, they've been there when it's blowing 25 and cloudy on that tide, and they will be there again, pretty much. That's what I'm saying. Snook and reds, the boat pressure moves them around a lot. There's just way more variables. Bonefish don't deal with salinity, or temperature bothers them, but not as they're real temperature tolerant,
But when I'm going down to, let's just say I'm going down to Flamingo, I'll contact you and say, are there a bunch of redfish around? I won't ask you about spots, but I'll just say, are there a bunch of redfish around? I ask you that because you were under the impression that these fish are extremely cyclical. Like they're there some years in high numbers.
Well, yeah, that's a different part to it. Yeah.
Or they're not there.
Like right now we're in more of a snook phase, in my opinion, than a redfish phase. We've been for a couple of years. But that's true.
But they completely leave for a year or so?
Some people complain about
the biomass I'm talking about.
Yeah, there's been years where
they complain about the bottom or the grass.
It doesn't have to do with that, with what we're talking about. It's just there's good snook years and bad years. Like after the freeze in 2010, the snook died. And we had the incredible freaking red fishing. And I remember what a biologist, I have a couple biologists I keep in touch with regularly. And they said they thought, if you think about snook and reds growing up together from when they're like a little fry stage, I don't know what all the other stages are, all the redfish mated, and sometimes the little baby snook eat the little baby reds as they're growing up together wherever they are floating around in the mangroves or in oceans or the Gulf. And like every redfish made it that year for a few years. So we had incredible redfish.
Because the snook died.
Yeah, and things just kind of even themselves out. And there's a testament to how resilient, even though a lot of people complain about things, the area is so resilient down here. It's absurd.
What about the water quality? Because there was that one year where all the grass died.
Yeah, that was,
What's
I think,
happening with that now?
So, I'm more, to be honest, which I want to get into, like conservation. I'm more about the fish and like other things. I'm not a huge water, I can't speak to the water. Yeah, I'm not an expert on it. Right now there's a ton of grass in Florida Bay. The grass has grown back great. That was 10 years ago. I know some people would say there's good grass and bad grass, but there's life everywhere and there's grass all over the place. When we have hard rains, we still get algae blooms. That's always happened since I've been a kid. I think things are good right now. I think we're in a really good place personally. And I can't speak to why that is or whatever. You know, there's so many different opinions. I don't want to say the wrong thing. I'm not super educated in it, but I know what I see, and there's a lot of life out there. And we do have more fresh water than normal now because we're catching bass in places we've never caught them in my life, which is a little scary because now it's pushing the snook out of places where they used to be. That's like a new thing we're dealing with this winter, like as we speak. You'll hear about it from other people, but like we're catching bass like way outside of where we normally catch them. So It's a little freaky, but things look good.
That's an indication of good water.
Well, more fresh water.
More fresh water.
If that's what you want, which is what seems like that's what people want.
That's crazy because that contradicts a lot of what people have been saying.
Yeah, talking about the water not going south and getting down to
there's
Florida.
A lot. There's a ton. There's more than what we've ever had. Just based on catching bass, where I've never seen them since I've been doing this. I've been guiding for 27 years, and I was fishing there 5-6 years before that. So definitely never caught them in some of the places. Yeah.
Interesting.
So what's the fishery like compared to when you first started?
I'm not and I know you're not asking, but I'm not like a doom and gloom guy. I'm a realist, and the thing is I think fishing's still good these days. We just have so many more freaking boats. So many more people that enjoy it. So that's the big change. We still have some incredible days. One big change is after that freeze, whatever happened to the huge bonefish, you know, you don't go and catch huge bonefish anymore. That used to be just a normal thing in the Keys, Florida Bay, Lower Keys and spots. There's still a lot of fish out there. In my opinion, boat pressure and amount of boats affect it a lot. So that will affect the quality of your day, obviously. Like in tournaments, I don't know if it was before you and I started fishing, Nikki, but I used to plan to fish like 3 spots, like morning spot, you know, middle day tide spot, end of the day spot. Now there's so many, not tournament guys, but just people out there, and it's fine. It is what it is. You have to fish one spot. You know, we're talking about like swimming tarpon. You can't move around. Yeah, so it's going to affect the quality of my day because the way I look at I'm taking a long route, but this is going to explain it. Like a tournament day, a tarpon tournament, we're talking about 9 hours. You pick a tide in a spot where you're going to get more than half of that 9 hours good fishing. That's kind of how my brain works. I've learned from the tournaments a little bit. So say whatever 4.5 hours is half. So try to pick a spot where I'm going to get a good 6 hours of fishing. I'm going to totally fucking waste the other 3 hours there, which sucks, but that's how you have to fish these days. You got to hold
your spot.
That's right. Yeah, which might mean I skip the morning spot, and I've talked to you about this. But when Pat Ford was doing the tournaments with me, I mean, I'd run to one morning spot, and if it was cloudy and we had a prolonged morning, we'd haul ass to another spot, hit 2 morning spots.
And it'd be open. You could get in.
It'd be open, and then I'd hit 2 daytime spots, and if clouds would come, you'd hit a third, run back to the ocean, always get a spot. So I think the fishery's good. You just have to lower your expectations. I know people talk about the good old days on here or whatever it is, what it was, but
well, look,
it's good.
It's still the good old days for a lot of people that have never seen this before.
It is.
You know, for guys like myself that have been around for the last 40 years.
Yeah.
They're still the good old days, but I'm not going to go out and catch 12 tarpon like I used to on certain days.
No, but if boats weren't around, you could. I mean, I don't know how that sounds, but that's just the truth.
I think you could.
Yeah, look at the COVID year. Like, you guys fished with me. It was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But, so I think things are good. It just, the fish catching gets spread out. It might be a right way for me to say it, you know? And there's years where things are great. Like, our bone fishing right now is in an incredible spot. It doesn't mean you have a good day every day. But there's days where it's absurd. Up and down the Keys, you know, which a lot of people think it's still not good.
Yeah, that's a great reminder for people to listen to the COVID years. I mean, everyone you talk to.
Yeah.
It's not just a few people. It's everyone who was on the water during those the 2 COVID years just had amazing fishing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, one of the things that was always interesting to hear, like Dustin Huff and the Lower Keys guys and Albert Punzola, the biomass in Florida Bay was immense.
Yeah.
There were thousands and thousands of tarpon out in Florida Bay.
I mean,
that can't be a coincidence.
I think all those fish are still alive, as we speak.
Yeah.
The fish are out there. Like I hear people say, I didn't see how it was this season. I didn't see many tarpon. Did they all die? Did the sharks eat them all? I think there's plenty of fish around. It's just they choose not to come in as much as they used to because of boats or whatever, weather. I don't know. But I think we're in a good place.
Okay, so I asked you what you think you're best at. What do you...
Yeah.
Are you trying to improve on something? What do you think you lack in your repertoire?
That's a good question.
Yeah, what's your weakest link?
It's a good question. I might have to think...
Other than weather.
Think about that one.
Other than women.
I have to think if women weren't on my mind, I would have been way more. I'm successful, but I might have been more successful for sure.
King in second place.
Yeah, right. There you go. I'm not. I suck. Yeah. So, well, I'm on a break now. So I've been single for like a year.
All
What kind of
seriousness.
podcast is this? No. Yeah.
All seriousness.
Yeah.
What do you think?
That's a good question. I don't know. I'd have to think. Let me think about it, and I'll get back to you in a minute or two. I want to answer it the right way. That's a tough one.
Okay, you better get back to me.
Yeah, I will. Like I used to say, it was ocean tarpon because I was known as a muddy water tarpon fisherman, but I've gotten much. Now I have total confidence out there.
Right.
I'd have to think about it. I guess mentally, fly fishing for permit. I mean, anyone could say that. Mentally, fly fishing for permit is hard for me. That's a pretty narrow
And
thing.
why is that?
Because they're just a pain in the
Unpredictable?
ass. Yeah. And I feel like I don't do it a lot, but I have some guys we do it. And it's just like bonefish, you make the right shot, you're going to catch them. Permit are just kind of dicks. And I'll think about your question more, but that's tough. Like, it's just tough. It's just the deck stacked against you. There are guys who are great at it. I'm not saying they're not catchable, but that's one thing. If I had more time, I'm busy, but if I had more time, I'd like to do that with some more people or more myself, just to get like confidence up and try some different flies. And yeah, I don't know.
Was there anybody that really inspired you to be who you became as a guide? As anglers, as an angler for me, I used to always look up and like Flip Pallet and Walker's Cay brought me to the table,
Yeah.
And then once I got into the game, we always heard about, Stu being the great tarpon guy. Yeah. Was there anybody that you really modeled your life or your guiding life after?
For sure. Walker's Cay was one of, other than growing up in the Keys and Broward bass fishing, watching Walker's Cay was one of my, joys. Every whatever it was, whatever morning it was on. Mm-hmm. But personally, I don't know Steve Huff, but his, routine with the trailering all over the place and Croca, which I know Croca, we're friends, but I would say those two guys, like, just driving to the ends of the earth, fishing here one day, there the next. I would say those two guys, even though I didn't need to talk about it. Mm-hmm. You just hear about it. And, it's way more fun for me. It's a lot easier for me to leave from Flamingo every day. It's close to my house. I live right on the edge of the park. It gets boring fishing the same stuff, and it doesn't make a whole lot of sense because the guy that's fishing the same places on your 6th day in a row, let's take out of a week. Just say I'm fishing 6 days. Say I have one day off, right? For example, the guy's getting sloppy seconds, thirds, fourths. So even though it's a ton of work, it's fun to trailer all over the place, fish out of your different boats. I don't do this every week. There are weeks I bait fish in the same canal or creek for sure. But based on Huff and Croca, Croca's a good friend, and when they got older, they don't do it as much. But when they were younger, it's a rush. If you can time it up, like 2 days you fish over here, 2 days over here, and the other 5th, 5th, and 6th day are fishing different places. Could be Choccolessi, Biscayne,
Key West.
Yeah, I don't. Since the COVID, with all the car traffic, I don't trailer down there as much. I had a buddy with a house in Big Pine for most of my life, but he sold it, and the traffic's too bad. But I used to leave from Big Pine a lot. But it's a rush. Like, for me to put that together, it's kind of hard to explain, but that's fun.
And go actually be successful.
It is. It doesn't happen often. It happened a couple of weeks ago. We just had a cold snap. This is February, but in January this year, we had like a cold snap. People were worried about fish kills. But I took off a few days, the coldest days. It was rainy. And I got back to it when it was still really, really cold. And the water temp was in the high 50s. And I had a 5-day stretch that was lights out. And it started bait fishing. And this is a quick example. And I remembered, not until I got to the marina, what I do in the freeze in 2010 when I started fishing again. And there were like a few things that came to mind. And that day, which is the first day back, I had a father and son. We went right to spot number 1 where I did good after the freeze, where I even caught a few snook. And it was, fish were piled up. It was so good that we left catching them because it felt unfair. And I explained it to him. I was like, guys, these fish, aren't probably doing well. Let's get out of here. And we ran super long ways just based on my freeze memory, like over an hour. And we caught a whole bunch of other fish. And those were only 2 spots, and it was based on the memory of 2010, an hour and 25. So that's kind of how it works. It isn't always that simple, but literally came to me that morning like, wait, even though that's like a super long-ass run, let's just try those places and start there.
Right. But, so let me ask you this. So when I was fishing with Harry Spear, we'd get in a spot, and we'd just start mohawking the fish in the backcountry. And he, too, way back then, almost 35 years ago, he'd say, all right, we've had enough. Let's go. And he wouldn't go back there for a whole week. Yeah. Now you can't do that because there are so many boats. But where did you first think that we're taking advantage of these fish and it's just not right?
It's really difficult. So
Instagram.
Well, I was fishing too when Harry was still fishing, and I would see you guys fish, like his probably last few years of fishing or when I was starting to fish. So I used to do that, and even before the Tarpon tournaments, my first tournament I did was in 2000, and we would even like rest, which that doesn't happen anymore, like some laid up Tarpon spots.
Save them for the for the tournament day.
Yeah. And I'm not saying, common areas. We're talking about a little corner where there'd be a dozen fish or something, and they would bite though. But I guess I don't know. At some point, there's just too many people, and with GPSs making everything more accessible, and you can see all the spots driving your boat. Once you develop the common sense to just look at it and see where spots might be and guess, then nothing gets rested. But there are times, like on the really cold day, it was 10 days ago or so, we were catching the hell out of really big snook, and it was one after the other. And that's part of our job as a guide to kind of tell people what's going on. And I was like, after an hour, I was like, guys, this is kind of getting ridiculous. And then 10 minutes later, I'm like, guys, let's just get out of here. We've done enough. We've seen enough.
Good for you.
And I don't know, that's part of the big picture, but not everyone goes along with that. But it's important. It doesn't happen often. I mean, fishing isn't like that these days.
I will say, going back to my dad's question on people who you've looked up to. Yeah. I remember in tournaments when you had a question or didn't really know the ethics of a scenario or something, you'd say, I need to talk to Craig Brewer because you always had him on high regard as ethics.
And he's he's the most straight shooter. Granted, there's some other straight shooters, but he does it with like a rudeness, which I like because it's
blunt. Very blunt.
He's blunt. Now, he's not rude. He's just brutally honest, like your college buddy would be, and that's how I like communicating with people.
Well, that's what Mike Criscola said about you.
That's right. Yeah. My language isn't sometimes the best, but
it's good.
Yeah, I think it is.
It's cut and dry. There's no gray.
Yeah, you ask Craig. Like I remember one time. I don't like talking about spots. You're not going to get me to say the name of a spot, but it's one of the more common ocean tarpon areas in Islamorada where a lot of boats fish, and you can either run around the outside corner, and it was blowing like east at 25. And I don't know if it was with you or with Roger Fernandez. And You get the shit beat out of you. And I saw guys running the inside a couple times. So I did it. And I don't think this was a tournament day. I hope it wasn't. Don't think it was. And then I asked him, at the kickoff tournament, I said, did I do the right thing or the wrong thing? And he's like, only lazy motherfuckers do that. You fucking run the outside every time. And, you're going to have to plow through the waves and you're going to get soaked, but that's how you do it. And that's great. I've never done it again, Granted, on some full moon, high tide, maybe some guys run the inside and there's a way to do it, but I'm not ever doing it again.
Good for you.
And I liked that he didn't pussyfoot around. Oh, one thing that drives me nuts is when, your buddies say, I always have his back, or I always have his back. I think it's important, which is what Craig does. And there's some younger guys that ask me for advice. And, I'll always tell them like that. You don't bullshit him. Just cause he's your friend, that never flies with me. What you did was stupid. This is the way you do it. Anytime you're just, patting them on the back and saying it wasn't really your fault, I think you're steering someone the wrong direction. That's why I like Craig. I wanted to talk about that anyways.
Yeah.
But there's a few young guys that are fishing now, and they're like, hey, was I in the wrong? And sometimes they were, sometimes they weren't. But I say always be honest with them. Otherwise, you're just cheating them and bullshitting them into the wrong thing in the future. Mm-hmm. So does that make sense?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. For sure.
Yeah. Just anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How have the tournaments helped you as a guide?
It's a great question. I think I know there's some great guides who have never done them, first of all, so I'm not saying you should do them, but I think it's good to put yourself out there because it's definitely a different day. And not to think that we don't work as hard on regular days, but starting with the knot preparation, it's a whole different level. And when I've done group charters with guides where we're fishing the same anglers multiple days, there's no question that a guide who, I'm not saying all of them, but some who have never done tournaments, the knots are going to be not as good as mine, or Fordyce or Helms, or I've seen those guys' knots. That's when I started I was testing some knots when I started guiding, but the testing on a scale of knots, different kinds of biminis, different amount of wraps, that really changed when it came to tournaments. And the first tournaments, my knots were great, but they've only gotten better. And the last 5 years, they've been the same, or maybe 6 years, they're exactly the same. Mm-hmm. It's dialed. It can't get any stronger. I'd put them up against anyone. So that's one thing. The multi-species tournaments, like the Herman Lucerne, or the swamp guides where you're fishing for bonefish, permit, little tarpon, all these different things, which I'm not a fan of. Since the sharks got around, I stopped doing those a few years ago. I think it's bad for the fishery, the multi-species ones. The timing in your brain, there's times where you feel like your freaking head's going to explode. The, tarpon tournament, the truth is finding a big tarpon, you guys can go on the ocean side, throw out your anchor, and some are going to swim by. It's not that hard, especially when the weather's good. It's easy. But these multi-species tournaments, you got a morning tide you want to hit for a tailing bonefish, rolling tarpon. And anyways, my timing with those multi-species thing got way better because you want to hit one thing with bait and then go hit this, but then you didn't catch one of those, so you missed that. That trickled over into my regular fishing. So that helped out a ton. Mm-hmm. I did the professional redfish tour, which isn't the tarpon tournament, but that's when braided line was coming into the picture. It was 2003. And it forced me to learn the best braided line to mono connection, which I still use exactly the same to this day.
What is that?
It's a uni to uni. And I asked Rick, because I started using braided line for that. And this is where I'm fishing. I'm not guiding. And I know it's not a tarpon tournament, but I learned a lot due to the amount of, we were fishing for a huge amount of money. And I said, Rick, I'm using this braided line. This shit casts a mile. I got to use it. I can throw a better no splash cast. So he says uni to uni. And he said 3 and 8, which means always do a bimini. You always start off everything with a bimini on braided line we're talking about now. And you do 3 wraps of the mono, which is usually 30 to 50 pound. And then 8 wraps of the double bimini. But the way I cinch mine down is different than almost anyone. I probably showed it to you. It goes through the guides like as good as one of those FG knots, which I hate.
Yeah, because the uni has a reputation of having like a monkey's knuckle.
Yeah,
it's like big.
That's when you don't tie it right. Yeah. You want the tag ends should face down the main lines and almost get like sucked into them. And I trim mine like inside the knot, I call it. You can trim it within a millimeter of where it comes out. There should not be a knuckle sticking up on you're not tying it right. Which is how most instructors on YouTube, they don't tell you to tie it right. But anyways, if it wasn't for the redfish tour, I would have been behind the scale in that uni to uni knot. Mm-hmm. It's a small thing, but it's huge. I use it today. I use the same knot shark fishing, which is they're a few hundred pounds, which there isn't a stronger way to test knots. I don't know. Mentally, tournaments, if you have a shitty weather day, you have to be upbeat. You have to have a plan. You can't just get to the dock, which I see half of the tournament field. We've seen this, where it's shitty out and you're like, dragging your dick down the dock, and you're like, oh, hemming and hawing. You got to be confident, which flows into your regular fishing. Like, we're going to go out there.
Let's go.
I got a plan, and then I have a backup plan, especially if the weather's bad. And then a lot of times it's plan C. And that tournaments help that. Because a regular day, some guides...
they lose at the dock.
Yeah, exactly. I'm afraid of lightning. That's about the only thing that'll send me packing. But I'm terrified of lightning.
Yeah, he is.
But if it's blowing or raining or cold, I'm like, let's go. Yeah, I'm ready. I got a plan. You know what? It's fine.
So didn't you guys have like a scary ride back from Flamingo one day in a tarpon tournament?
Yeah, that was... We hid in the mangroves. I think I was on the deck.
That was bad lightning, though.
That was really bad.
Yeah.
That was the worst storm I've ever been in on the water.
And we were forced to do something stupid in a tournament, but we had one of the better days I've ever had.
You had a couple straps, didn't you?
We had 1 strap and 7 releases.
6 releases.
That was the first day of that Golden Fly tournament.
Yeah, it was a great day. The temperature dropped like, the water temperature started to drop because it was so cold and rainy, and it made the fish really weird. And I don't think a lot of fish were seen, but we caught 7. I had a day.
That was the only weight fish that first day, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it was like 83, and we had 6 releases. Yeah. I had a day with, I'm not a bragger, but I had a day with Pat in the Golden Fly where we caught 7 also, which I probably should have retired after that. Sorry, Pat, but that might have been some of my best guiding ever.
Wow.
And you still got second.
Yeah, we did. No, we got third. We got third. To you. You're an asshole. Yeah. No, that was a great day with Pat. We, when I think about it, because I was young and I remember thinking like, oh yeah, this is great. We went out. It was probably like my 3rd or 4th big time tarpon tournament, and actually I have a great story. I won't say his name, but we got back to the dock. You and Doug Kilpatrick murdered everyone. We came in 3rd with a lot of points, Pat and I. The last day we caught 3 weights and 4 releases.
Wow.
Yeah, and then
that's a big day.
Ned Johnson and Craig Brewer, which is cool, came in 2nd, and you and Doug just like blew everyone away. Was this okay? So we come in the last day. We caught some fish the first 2 days too, but we pull into the Lorelei. This is in that first HPX I bought after seeing Hoover's, and we pulled up to one of the other really good teams, and they didn't like know me or anything. And this is where you gain some respect in those tournaments. This is a cool moment I'll never forget. And like I opened the front hatch. This is about taking the straps out. And they're like, "How'd you do?" And I was like, "Oh, we had a good day," because I try to be as modest as I can. And I pulled one strap out, and he's like, "Oh, well, looks like you had a good day," And then like I dig around and pull the other strap out. He's like, the angler this is, not the guide. He says, "Oh, well, now I'm just starting to hate you," or something like that. And then I pulled out the 3rd strap, which is a huge one, which was intentional once I knew someone was there. The other first 2 were like barely made it. He's like, "Now you're just a total fucking asshole. Fuck you." And since then, that angler and I have been good friends. He fished with me some afterwards. And that's what tournament fishing's about,
Absolutely.
And I love seeing, I don't respect all the teams, but even if you don't have a good day, it's great seeing in bad weather, like what some of these teams can produce. It's crazy.
Amazing.
We've all seen it. It's nuts. Like when you're just like, well, our last Golden Fly was the worst year ever, but we don't see a fish and guys are coming with all kinds of fish.
Yeah, I remember.
Which is what I did that day.
Yeah, like on a bad day when we don't see a lot of fish or we don't have a great day, we always talk when we're running in, like, how many straps?
Yeah.
How many straps you think? And we're always like, not always, but I remember that last year I was like, shit, that was, I don't know, maybe two straps.
Yeah, it was bad.
Or
I didn't find many
something,
fish for
and
it. It was
They'd
slow.
be fucking.
10 straps.
It's unbelievable. I mean, these
good
teams
fishermen
are
out there.
fucking good.
Fishermen these days, I know people say when they stop killing tarpon and the way we measure them in the water now isn't as accurate and the scores are higher. Fishermen, guides talk about it amongst fishermen are so freaking good these days. And the speed of the fly rods casting in the wind.
Better
There's no
hooks.
big.
They're just better.
When the wind's
Come
blowing
on.
25, you can cast into it, no problem. The
Yeah.
hooks are ridiculous. Fishermen are so good now.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is.
Yeah.
Like,
There was only one time that I was really happy that Pat Ford beat me.
Oh.
And that was when Linda Robertson won the Golden Fly.
Okay.
She won and Pat got second.
oh wow, that's funny.
Then I lost to Diane Rueff in the
That's
Holly,
right.
but it's
That's
all
right.
good.
Wow.
It's great to see women fishing in these tournaments.
It
you
is.
know,
I think those two are
it's
the-
awesome. You know, Kat Linville won the permit tournament with Kilpatrick. It's just great to see the evolution of tournaments and the different anglers that have come and gone. Where the guides are always there. I mean, your fraternity of guides
Yeah.
is like a special family.
Yeah. It is good too. Those tournaments bring people together. Like there's some guides I wouldn't have met from the lower keys if I wasn't in those things. So it's good to, even if you don't like them, it's a good experience to do them. You certainly forces you to refine everything that you're doing. Not that the guides that aren't in them aren't good. There's plenty of amazing guides.
For sure.
But it forces you into situations you aren't comfortable, which is probably good.
Well, you were on the board of the Guide Alliance at one point. Working
Guide-
with
yeah.
BTT and
Guides
conservation,
Foundation,
and helping people fight big tarpon with the drags on their reels. Talking to your audience here about how important that relationship with BTT and conservation has been for you, and the de-hooker for bonefish.
Yeah.
and that whole
Sure.
environment.
Yeah, I care about the fish a lot. I'm not as much. I've said that before. Not as much not an expert in the water in the seagrass area. People ask my opinions. I've talked to them about it, but I wish people cared about the fish more because we have so many people fishing. I just think it's really important. If we don't treat them right, they're not going to be around. And I think humans killing them are the biggest reason. That's one of their biggest fears. I know people say water is, but and I don't mean killing them to eat. I mean if you mishandle them post release, just to them dying on their own or a shark eating them. So I'm definitely proud of more than any or as much as anything the initiative which started with me and Doug Kilpatrick and Ross Bosek from BTT, which is the de-hooker. You'd have to go on their website, and it tells them to detail it. At first, it was just keep them wet. Like, that was always a slogan for BTT. And when Instagram got big, I'm jumping around, but this is all part of it. Someone in the fishing industry put up a picture on Instagram advertising something. And it was a tarpon like the size of a hand, like a tiny little baby tarpon. And a guy was holding it with gloves like this, okay, with whatever gloves. And all you could see was like an inch of a fork of a tail and an eyeball and a little jaw. And I called him and I said, you can't possibly be serious. This is what started it all, the de-hooker thing. And we had it out. And he's like, everyone does it. I said, this isn't cool. You're using this like to make money. This is like ridiculous. It was the ugliest thing you could ever imagine. And I called Ross, and Doug was the head of the Keys Guide Association at the time. My part in the Keys Guide Association was just like advisory. I wasn't a president or anything. And we had a talk, and I'm like, we got to do something. Social media is going crazy. We got to try to help limit the pictures. I mean, it's not a law. It's just suggestions.
Right.
And we had meetings and meetings and meetings. And tarpon and bonefish, I just feel like should be taken more care of. They're responsible for a huge part of the economy in the Keys and around the world in these destinations. Like, look at the Bahamas. Mm-hmm. So, and snook and redfish you can kill anyways, right? You can keep them to eat. Still, we need to be careful with them. But it's kind of hard to super protect a fish that you can eat anyways. Mm-hmm. Bonefish require more oxygen than just about any other fish. That's one big thing with them. That's why you see them in the ocean. You don't see them hidden in the backcountry in like brackish water. It's super rare anyways. tarpon, if you treat them good, I'm jumping around, but this is just important to me, so it is what it is. They live, like, people don't think about this when you're casting them. They live close to 70. Like, I think it's 68 is the oldest one that they've measured the year after its carcass. So a lot of the fish we're casting at could be older than us. Not older than you. That was good. I wasn't premeditated.
I'm that
So,
202.
cha-ching, yeah.
I'm that 202-pound tarpon.
So, like, one thing I say when I see people mistreat a baby tarpon is, like, if you fuck that thing up, like, you know, you're ending its life or feeding it to a shark, taking a picture of it or whatever. If you let that thing live and it's a female, like, that thing could go out and make so many babies for another 60 years. Okay, just, you know, think about that. That's like a big thing on you to think about. And taking pictures has become not cool. I get it. I get in arguments with guides. It's my family's, you know, I make money for my family. I provide. I get advertised. Take pictures of jumping tarpon. Take pictures of bonefish around the boat, like right at the end of the fight, bouncing around the boat. It looks cool. But I say when people get on my boat, we're only taking a picture if it's your first or your biggest, especially with tarpon and bonefish. Tarpon, we never take them out of the water. And babies, the suggested thing for both these fish now is to hold them over the water. So when you drop them, they drop in the water. I mean, you drop a little tarpon in the boat, it's just going to beat the hell out of itself. That's kind of what it all goes to. But I recommend going on Bonefish Tarpon Trust website and look up the fish handling rules. But taking pictures is not cool. It's become less cool. I still have to take some. And you have to coach your anglers beforehand. Like, if you're going out to a big bonefish spot where they're going to be big, say, look, only if it's your biggest one, we're going to take a picture. It's going to be over the water. It's going to be for 10 seconds or less. I'm going to snap like one shot. And if you fuck up the hold, that's it. But the de-hooker thing, when you learn that and start doing it, it's recommended you fish barbless. I understand that's not for everyone. It's meant for bonefish, not for little tarpon. That's huge because they have such a thick layer of slime, so do all fish, but we've all touched a bonefish. It's nasty. And they're so weak with the oxygen thing, and they fight so hard. You know, they fight hard as hell, pound for pound, I think. Harder than anything else. They exhaust themselves. And what I found, BTT can't study this, but I bonefish a lot. When you bring them in and they're like kind of circling around the boat, they never come in slow, like horizontal or laying on their side like a tarpon. If you stop their motion, meaning you grab them or just hold the leader and like admire them, it's hard to get them going again. They'll always release just sort of in a slow motion. Okay? Like on a scale of 1 to 10, if they're fighting at a 10, they'll release at a number 1 every single time. With a de-hooker, once you get good at it, this isn't you pick them up out of the water and shake them off like a catfish or a sea trout or something. You slide it in the water and you do it gently in the water. And it doesn't work perfect every time, but it works a lot. If you don't stop them and you grab the leader close to the hook and you hit them with the de-hooker and they take off while there's still like some motion to them, they'll take off at like a level 4 instead of a level 1. Every single time. If they're hooked weird and you struggle to get it out, that's different. But that's a huge tip, and you have to feel better about that. This bullshit of netting them, holding them with 2 hands, throwing them back, watching them barely make it away. The same guy catching another one an hour later, netting that one, taking another picture. Those days are over. It doesn't make any sense.
So if a client catches a 12-pounder, it's his biggest one ever, he wants to take a photo, you're not going to net him.
The only thing I've netted, we caught 2 big ones last year, is a permit on fly. That'll net. That's it, because that's harder to catch. Giant bonefish, I haven't netted one since my last bonefish tournament, which I don't know when that was. But no, I have not netted one. We caught 2 that were 10 or over. I don't weigh them. We go by BTT's measurement inches. But no, didn't net either of them, swear. So yeah, the net screws them up so bad.
Can they be resuscitated if you just hold them in the water? Before you pick them up for the photograph?
Well,
because it's still not the water's not going through their gills. Would it help?
They're just, I've talked to Ross about this. They just need so much oxygen, Andy. It's like they're just very weak. I don't know the answer to that. You know, I don't know if they could do a study on that. I just don't know. But and snook and redfish I care about a lot too. But it's tough. We have a big shark problem now too. That's a whole nother podcast. But you know, if you're around sharks, you got to be observant. You got to be careful. I mean, some snook and reds are going to get eaten, but bonefish and tarpon are usually in clearer water. You should be observant and leave or figure shit out before it gets bad. I keep a bucket of rocks around bonefishing on the tower, just like a little gallon painter's bucket. And I keep rocks a little smaller than a baseball. I've been doing it for about 5 years. This is a good tip for everyone. I used to throw bottles, like plastic bottles, and then go retrieve them, which I learned from Croca. But that's a pain in the ass, grabbing like 4 water bottles. You can't find them all. So I started throwing rocks like 3 years ago.
At sharks.
And that's the best way to deal with the problem. I haven't had a bonefish eaten in probably 3 or 4 years.
Wow.
And it isn't always throwing them at the sharks. Sometimes you throw it at the shark and they don't do anything. Sometimes you throw it like some opposite direction and the shark goes after it.
Wow.
So basically my bucket of rocks is there and like there's no problems, and then we'll have one shark hits in it and I'll empty it. Like it's just rapid fire.
Wow.
But it's a huge thing. I haven't talked about it
That's smart.
publicly much. It is smart.
You figured it out on your own?
It's incredible. It's incredible. It works like as good as anything you can imagine.
Well, the Bahamian guide should listen to this one because there's so many lemon sharks chasing their bonefish over there.
I'm glad you mentioned this. So one reason I'm really proud of the de-hooker thing and the handling, there are some lodges. I know it's called Flamingo Cay in the Bahamas, which is one of the better bonefish lodges. They've handled fish and I think used de-hookers before any of us. Probably some others too. But now it's mainstream to use a de-hooker and not take pictures of every one, you know? And I even had someone go to Christmas Island recently. I mean, this was great for me to hear. And the guides there were using de-hookers. And I was like, what? And he said, yeah, they learned some BTT thing. And I was like, holy shit, this is awesome. So it's spreading around the world just from me getting pissed off at a guy advertising something on Instagram. And like people say when they see this, hey, that guy fillets fish all the time. I keep my share of fish. That's not what this is about. It's about if you're going to murder a fish, like snook or red or whatever, fine, kill it, no problem. But if you're going to catch something and release it, give it the best fucking chance you can to have that thing survive, which most people do not. Like 9 times out of 10, that doesn't happen. And if you're with a guide in another country where you can kill bonefish and they want one to eat, that's fine. Have them kill a couple bonefish. I'm serious. I'm not being sarcastic. But the other 20 that you catch that day, treat them good because it's only coming back around. So I'm super passionate about that.
Do you think there's ever going to be a moment where on Instagram you're going to be shamed for holding fish out of the water?
It's there.
So we flip all that.
We're there. The guides who are doing that and the anglers, guides for advertising, they're not shamed publicly, but they're frowned upon amongst our peers. And I know it's spread ocean fishing too. Like, granted, that's more of a fish killing thing, and that's okay because you're bringing fish up from deep water. Some die anyways. But even that, the killing and people are trying to take care of things. It's a different sport. I shouldn't compare them. But there's guides that are frowned upon. If you're netting them, taking pictures all the time, you promise you're frowned upon. I'll give an example. When this started, and I talked to Doug about it, this is just fishing for baby tarpon in general. I started to feel bad just because everyone wants to catch them. They're a low skill fish. I'm just being honest. They're much lower skill than anything else, and it's what guides will start their day with to like have a good day and catch somebody a fish, hook a baby tarpon. And so many people were asking to do it. And it's probably the COVID time, and there's just boats everywhere, and boats just bothering all the same little tarpon spots. I talked to Doug about it. I talked to Dustin Huff. Those are the main two. I said, what do you guys think about this? Because these little fish are just getting pounded by all the new fishermen, by the guides with a lot of new clients, because there's this boom in fly fishing. There was a little boom after the COVID thing, everyone getting into it. And I didn't stop fishing for little tarpon, but only if it was like the last resort, or we'd catch one and leave. Yeah, but there's guides who just, that's all they do. Like, you just beat them up, and those guys are frowned upon, whether they know it or not. They probably know. So obviously I fish for little tarpon, but they live under the same tree their whole life until they get to be swimming age and they're 35 pounds and go offshore. It just doesn't make sense.
So vulnerable.
To keep beating the shit out of them.
Mm-hmm.
Of course I fish for them, but just don't pound them every single day, which is what a lot of people started doing. And anyways, Doug and Dustin, they're like, yeah, in the last few years, I fish for them way less. Only if it's like a day where I have bad viz, where we can't bonefish or permit fish. We got to lean on them. And even then, you don't catch 8 like we used to. You catch each guy 1, and then you move on and you try to do your thing and make the rest of the day.
Or something.
Exactly.
Did you hear that? You got to stop picking on the small little juvies.
They'll only fish over 100 pounds now.
Yeah, right.
Well, every fish is 80 or 100, right?
Yeah, right. That's what Mahaffey and I started, which I told you about. Yeah, in the tarpon scene, I don't want to say the name of where, but there's places you come in and sometimes have a drink after a day. It's probably all around the world with all fishing. And Mahaffey and I had the joke. It's like, tarpon are either 80 or 120. It's like, I'm come sit at the bar and I caught 2 80s and a 120. Oh, that's funny. He caught 2 120s and an 80. There's fucking nothing between 81 pounds and 119 pounds. It's just like there's a big age gap there. That's just fisherman line.
It's really funny.
You hear those numbers a lot of 80 and 120s swimming out there, it seems like. Anyways, yeah.
Well, totally off topic. I just think this is really cool, and I've never heard anyone say this, but you've seen 2 panthers in the park.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Yeah. Yeah, and this is honest, no bullshit. Like, if people see bobcats and weird things or dogs dropped off at the entrance, but 100% clear as day, 2 panther sightings. Yeah, the first one was it was like early 2000s, and it was on the beach where the Middle Cape Canal comes out of Lake Ingram on the north corner where people camp. I pulled up there to net some mullet and had this pharmacist, David Harris, long time ago. This is before iPhones, so I didn't get footage. And I was in my Maverick Master Angler and put the trolling motor down, got the cast net, and David walks up and just like elbows me and doesn't say a word. I'm like, what the fuck, And he's just pointing. And there's a panther 100 feet down the beach that stands up, shakes the sand off like he was sitting, like, just sitting like tucked in the tuck position, whatever. Stands up, he's facing away from us, shakes the sand off just like a dog would shake, a wet dog would shake off. And I start tiptoeing back. I had like a Nikon camera in a case, and I'm looking the other way. I never had time to get it out. And he turned around, looked at us, long tail. They're a mountain lion, that's what they are. And just slowly walked away from us into the brush. And the brush there is like a mixture of tan and green, and disappeared in a second.
A brown cat?
Yeah, brown. Yeah. Yeah, they're a mountain lion. That's what they are.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
And that's the coolest thing I've ever seen in my life, I'd say, with clothes on. That's the coolest thing for sure.
Of course you had to throw that in.
So I'm trying to keep it clean. Feel my bad. Been doing good so far. So the other one was like 2 years ago, and it was just on the park road in what we call the Pinelands on the way to Flamingo, which is the most like tree, bushy, tall trees. There's a pine tree forest. Very beginning of the park, right when you come in. And there's a lot of coyotes there now, but there was a panther just standing just on the side of the road where you'd pull off to, and luckily he was facing into the tree line, not out. And I had the cruise control set at 55 and pitch black, and he was on a corner and just went by him. I never even tapped the brake. And my guy goes, "Is that?" I go, "Yeah." And I went by, hit the brakes, and started to reverse and got out of light, and he was gone. Just as clear as day. Mm-hmm. And the one on the beach was a big one, which I believe that's a male. It was like a intimidating looking animal. The females are much smaller. I've since learned about them. And the one on the park road a couple of years ago, that was a female. But it was like
super
a real
cool.
small cat.
I think where you fish flamingo is one of the most amazing places I've ever fished. The drive from Homestead, which is, kind of a weird place in itself.
It is.
And then all of a sudden you're going, out into the Everglades and you see these beautiful sunrises. Usually you're in the dark, but if you happen to catch that early light, it's just the most amazing place. And too, you get to see so many wild animals, alligators and crocs and the wildlife, the birds and the roseate spoonbills.
That's important. I mean, not nothing to take away from like ocean tarpon fishing, but a lot of times we're looking at pavement, I say it's good to experience all the fishing we have down here. Don't just fish with one person in the same place your whole career. But ocean tarpon fishing, we're looking at pavement or cars, other boats, shouting, screaming. You're hearing music going by on a wave runner. My idea of a perfect day is fishing in the Everglades and not seeing another boat. It happens very often, still to this day. We still see them coming in or out the channel in the afternoon. But very often we don't see another boat. And that, to me, is special.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Tell me about this gentleman that you were fishing, and, it was a very impactful moment where he caught possibly his last fish. Tell me about that.
I'll try not to cry, but no guarantees. This gets back to being like a therapist with people. It's a guy that, and I believe he was like 82 or 83 at this time, and he'd fish with some other guides you've even had on here over the years. And some people, as they age, can afford to keep fishing, even though like you've just like into their 90s, even you're just sitting there on the boat. You can't even cast. They just want to continue to go out and be in nature. He didn't have the funds to like fish all the time. It was a big deal to get a guide. So his health had gotten bad, and I didn't really know how long he was going to fish for. And we would bonefish and tarpon fish. And we were bone fishing in like a big fish spot in the bay. And he caught like a huge bonefish. It was over 10. It was huge. And he said, I want a picture. And I'm like, what? Because we don't really do that. And he just jumped right in. I was like, all right. So, which jumping in isn't the answer to taking pictures. You still have to be quick with them. If you're in the water, that doesn't count. You still got to release him quick. Standing in the water with him for a minute's bad. But he jumped in. I was like, holy shit. I helped him in because he could barely walk. He could walk, but his casting wasn't great and his balance wasn't good and he had some health problems. I take a picture, let it go, and he leans on the gunnel and just totally breaks down and starts crying. Like me. And I'm like, what the hell's going on here, And it occurred to me, like, that was the last great fish, he'll ever catch. And I realized that I asked him, and he said, I'm done. And I think he fished in freshwater some after that, like for bass and things. But, that's a moment that people don't realize that we see. And that was like his last day of technical saltwater fishing. He's still alive. I don't know for how long, but, that was a big deal. So, that's part of being, people for a long time, It's part of the deal, but that was huge. And that shows how important this is to people,
Yeah, for sure.
So,
look,
yeah.
it's especially when you get a, you got me on that one too.
Yeah, it's a beautiful story.
Sorry.
But it's such a special thing, and you're fishing for such amazing animals.
Yeah, yeah.
And the connection between who we are as people in the outdoors, whether we're hunting and fishing.
Yeah,
it is so real, and the connection goes to the core.
Yeah, yeah.
And I can't even imagine. We all get to the stage where we can't get up there anymore. And it's like when Nikki and I are elk hunting. I'm thinking to myself, like, how much longer can I actually do this?
Yeah,
and it's sad because it means so much to us.
Yeah,
and I get that, and for sure. And like as yourself being a guide and a close friend of this guy, you're watching that very fragile, precious moment where he's saying goodbye.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Sad. Way to go, Eric. You just made everyone cry.
You need Kleenex as a sponsor. Yeah.
No, that was a great story.
Yeah, thanks, Will. Oh, man.
It's like watching you and Nikki fish these tournaments together has really been special for me as a father of Nikki and a good friend of yours.
Yeah.
And to seeing these, you get back to the dock and you hear about these days where broken fly lines, fish goes under docks and this and that, and you guys almost win this tournament. I think you lost by 21 ounces or 16, something like
the Gold Cup was the same one year from Mike and I. It was like 7 ounces, I think. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah,
but it is what it is. Yeah.
But it's not about the wins. It's the adventure and the challenges, and you're trying to do something that very few people have ever done in their lives. Win one of these big tournaments, and the human relationship and how well it grows to something that you become inseparable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, yeah.
In so many ways.
Yeah.
Like
and the memories. Yeah. They'll stick with me forever. I mean,
there's some
we
things.
never won a tournament, but those memories will just be with me forever. I remember.
I have one that's crazy.
I remember, that it was the last day in the Golden Fly, and actually, I think it was the year that you and Fordyce fucking won. But anyway, we were on the ocean. It was fucking blowing, and it was just a little overcast, and we had a really, really good afternoon on the ocean. And I was casting from the back of the boat, and my line tamer was fucking flying in the in the ocean. We had to get it twice, and I got it back, and they were swimming. They were fucking swimming, and it was a backhand cast, and we hooked a big fish, and we fought the big fish, and I had it close to the boat, and I broke the rod right above the cork, and so then I had to fucking hand line this thing, and he was a big fish. He was a weight fish, and I'm hand lining this thing, and I'm thinking that I'm gonna fucking get him.
Which in this that counts as a catch, I guess, right?
Yeah,
I don't know the rules.
A world record it would not count, but in the tournaments we abolished that record of broken rod. You still catch him, it counts.
Yeah,
okay.
And
I forget that.
I'm hand lining him close to the boat, and he's like close, but he's not floating. But I'm gonna get him. Like the nail knot is like a foot away from me. And I remember doing that for like 10 minutes, and I fucking broke him off. And we get right back on there. I get to the back of the boat. Here comes another string.
I remember having rods ready. We were going through flies and rods quick.
That's and how we hook a fish, and this fish starts screaming, and it goes underneath two docks, shears my backing, right? Shears my fucking backing.
This is tournament fishing.
Did you lose your fly line?
In like a
Lost
second.
Everything.
Yeah, in like a second. Everything. So that's right after this other.
Broke a rod. Lost my fly line, sheared the backing, so now we're on our third rod. Fucking string comes again, it's blowing, backhand cast again, hook a fish, and we, on any given day, on a fun day, we catch the fish. I lead her in the rod tip. Eric is getting ready to grab the fish. The face is right there. The fish is floating.
Oh, yeah.
And the fish just won't open its mouth. Just fucking lockjaw. Just won't open his mouth. Eric is trying to get his hands in the jaw, and he does this one little head shake. Fly comes out, and this fish is just fucking floating.
This is great.
Right next to the boat. And Eric has his buff on, and it's blowing. And
it's
Eric,
rough as hell.
It's rough as fuck. And this fish is just fucking floating a foot away from the gunnel, and Eric just dives in, right?
Yeah.
Dives in, bear hugs him.
Knees, arms, all around it, yeah.
Hugs him, and now he's underwater with all I can see is his knuckles grabbing the fish, and he pops up with his buff. He can't breathe.
Couldn't breathe. Didn't think to take a breath.
And he has this fish, and there's just like this moment of like, it's like calm, and all I see is Eric bear hugging this tarpon, and that tarpon just slips out like.
It whacked me in the head and the balls, probably, and then it was gone. But
and Eric got in the boat. We just had this like minute of just laughing.
One. I'll just tell. I know we're on time, but one really quick one. That was a great one. But this was a visual. Like you didn't see it. Like you saw me going. This is when you went in the water. This was one of the crazy. Tarpon cause crazy stuff to happen. That's why we love them. But we were anchored 90 degrees, like to the shoreline. Meaning it was great for fishing because you could fish both ways and the boat wasn't interfering with the track. You remember it, with the track of the fish. And it was a 9 o'clock shot, wind over the right shoulder. It was a big fish. So picture a lot of anchor line going out. It was rough as shit. You hooked it and it kept swimming right at you and you couldn't get tight. And it went right under the bow. So like fly line going under the anchor line. And not many people would have done this, but this is the right thing to do. Like, as it's going by, Nikki just jumps in on that side with the rod and pops up on the other. The only thing to do was jump in and swim under the anchor line. and starts clearing his line. I don't think he got it cleared because it was coming at you. And he's trying to clear his line after he jumps in, and the ball line's in there under the anchor, and then it jumps off. And I'm just standing back there like,
what just happened?
He's like, I said, yeah, I couldn't believe he even thought to do that. Like, that was the only thing to do, obviously.
It's obvious to do it,
yeah,
but who's going to do it?
It took like a half a second.
It was. I didn't even think.
Yeah.
It was just like
Yeah,
I just.
I don't
did
know
it.
if you grab your line and jump, but yeah, you just, and you know, I've seen that crazy things a lot. That was one of the crazier things. Yeah.
And
If the fish stayed on, you would have caught him.
yeah. And then you were like, fuck, you know, but I'm like, of course he's going to jump off. You're not even tight.
You guys had the worst luck.
Like,
But every story like this ends with like it was like the biggest fish, but
that was a big one.
That was a fucking big fish.
I'm not going to exaggerate.
It was like a really big fish.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Eric, it's great. It's great having you.
Thanks for having me.
It's great having you on. And
What you got done?
great memories that we're going to share for a long time. You know, hopefully we can start fishing together a little bit.
What you guys done here is great, and thanks for having me on. And I like the fact that you had Steve Huff on here to start because he's someone I appreciate that, and nobody gets him on anything or shows, so that really meant a lot to a lot of us.
Well, I think that your voice is starting to matter to a lot of people because your voice has been there for a long time.
Yeah.
You know, as far as working with the Guides Association, the BTT,
Yeah.
and you're so respected by all your peers. And like I said in the beginning, I think, you know, that kind of respect that you've won over deservingly is more important than winning all this stuff.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Appreciate it.
You know, yeah, winning stuff is important too, but you know, it's your friends and the great times you've had, you know, with your friends is what life is all about, and sharing these great memories.
Yeah.
But in the world of what you do, having a voice that's respected, especially with, you know, the conservation-minded efforts, it's imperative that everybody starts thinking alike. And so I applaud you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah.
Eric, thanks so much, man.
Sure, Nikki. Thanks.
Had
Thanks
a
for
lot of
having me.
good times with you, and
All right,
really
Andy.
appreciate your friendship.
Andy, enjoy it while I still have some time, man. Yeah.
When I'm ready for my last fish, I'll call you.
Jeez. There we go.
Hopefully it won't be for a while.
Oh, it was fun.
Thanks,
All
Eric.
right, buddy. Thanks.
What I saw is West Side Story. What I saw is just a